I never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. 7 years after my life was completely derailed by my own family, they've suddenly decided they want to talk. And not because they finally realized they were wrong, or because they missed me. No, they want to reconnect because my brother, the golden child, the one they always put on a pedestal at my expense, is gone. I should probably back up a little. My name is Nathan. I'm 26 now, but this whole mess started when I was 19. From the outside, my family looked normal enough. Middle class, 2 parents who worked office jobs, a house in the suburbs with a well-manicured lawn, and family dinners that, at least on the surface, seemed picture perfect. But underneath it all, things were always off. My younger brother Ethan was the center of the universe. If he wanted something, he got it. If he messed up, there was always an excuse. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the kid who did everything right, but never seemed to be enough. Straight A's? Expected. Extracurriculars? Mandatory. Any kind of recognition? Non-existent. The moment things really started going downhill was when I got accepted into Stanford. It was my dream school, the one I'd worked my ass off for. I had the grades, the extracurriculars, and a solid SAT score. My brother, of course, decided he wanted to go there too, not because he had any real interest in academics, but because our dad went there, and continuing the legacy mattered more than actual qualifications. The day my acceptance letter arrived, I remember sitting at the kitchen table, refreshing my email with leftover pizza in hand. When I saw the subject line, my hands started shaking. I was in. I called my best friend immediately, grinning like an idiot, knowing full well my family wouldn't care much. And of course, they didn't. That night at dinner, when I announced the news, my mom barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, that's nice," she said, and within seconds, the conversation shifted to how they were sure Ethan would get in too. Spoiler, he didn't. The day his rejection letter arrived, you'd think someone had died. He came home, threw himself onto the kitchen floor, and sobbed like a 5-year-old. My parents rushed to his side, fawning over him, consoling him, telling him life was unfair. I, meanwhile, was sitting in the same room, my acceptance letter still stuck to the fridge, completely ignored. That's when things started getting weird. At first, Ethan was just sulking, giving me dirty looks, muttering under his breath. But then, he started telling people, friends, extended family, even random strangers, that I must have done something shady to get in, that I cheated, that I stole his chance. I brushed it off as his usual dramatics, but I had no idea how far he'd take it. The lies started small, whispers around school, the occasional passive-aggressive comment from relatives. Then, they escalated. Fake messages, rumors about me selling Adderall, accusations I couldn't prove false fast enough. By the time I set foot on Stanford's campus, my reputation was already under attack. And then, the bomb dropped. One night, midterms week, I was blindsided. Campus police raided my dorm. They found a shoebox under my bed stuffed with weed and unlabeled pills, none of which were mine. But that didn't matter. 3 students, who I later found out had been paid off by my brother, claimed they bought drugs from me. My protests fell on deaf ears. My parents, they didn't even ask if I was innocent. They believed Ethan, because of course they did. In less than a month, my entire future was gone. Expelled. Kicked out. No transcript, no appeal. Just a destroyed reputation and nowhere to go. The worst part? My parents stood by Ethan the entire time. They didn't just believe him, they helped bury me. Fast forward to now. 7 years of silence. 7 years of rebuilding my life from scratch. I went from sleeping in a friend's basement and working dead-end jobs to finding my own way, completely independent of them. And now, after all these years, they've shown up at my doorstep. Not because they regret what they did, not because they miss me, but because Ethan is dead. And suddenly, they want me back. I stood there on my porch staring at them, my parents, 2 people I hadn't seen in 7 years. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of time had finally caught up with her. Dad, on the other hand, looked exactly the same, except for the beard, which somehow made him seem even more smug than before. "Your house is bigger than we expected," Mom said, her voice flat. Not "Hi, Nathan," not "We're sorry," not even "We shouldn't have believed your brother's lies and ruined your life," just a passive-aggressive remark about my house. Classic. I didn't invite them inside. I didn't even move from the doorway. "What do you want?" Dad cleared his throat like he was about to launch into some rehearsed speech. We need to talk," Mom cut in. "About Ethan. About..." Everything. I almost laughed. After all these years, now they wanted to talk? When I was struggling, when I was homeless and working 3 jobs to afford a glorified pantry as a bedroom, they were perfectly fine pretending I didn't exist. Now that their favorite son was gone, suddenly I was worth their time. I could feel the bitterness rising in my throat. "No, we don't," I said. Mom's lips pressed together. "Nathan, please. We know we made mistakes. We were misled. You believed him. You helped him destroy my life." I crossed my arms. "You didn't just make a mistake. You abandoned me." Dad sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose like I was the one being difficult. "Son, look, we know things were complicated, but we didn't know." "Didn't know?" I scoffed. "You never even asked if I was guilty. You just assumed the worst. You let them kick me out. You told Grandma and Grandpa I was some kind of drug dealer." Dad's face twitched. "Well, we had no reason not to believe Ethan." I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. "Right, because Ethan was always so trustworthy." They both flinched at that. Maybe it was starting to hit them. Maybe. Mom took a shaky breath. "Nathan, we want to make things right. We've lost one son. We don't want to lose you too." I hated that, the way she said it. Like I was a spare part, a backup plan. Like I only mattered now because Ethan was gone. Before I could respond, Dad jumped in. "We were thinking we could have dinner together. A family meeting. Talk things through like adults." I stared at them. Unbelievable. They actually thought one awkward dinner could undo everything? That we'd sit around a table, say some apologies, and suddenly I'd just forget the years of silence, the way they let Ethan frame me, the way they stood by while my life crumbled. I let the silence stretch, just to watch them squirm. Then I exhaled. "No." Mom's eyes widened. "Nathan, I don't owe you anything," I said, my voice sharp. Not a conversation, not forgiveness, not a second chance. Nothing. Dad's jaw clenched. "You're being unreasonable." Unreasonable? Unreasonable. I took a step forward, my voice dropping. Unreasonable was getting expelled from my dream school because my brother couldn't handle failure. Unreasonable was you two standing by while he ruined me, never even questioning his story. Unreasonable was waiting 7 years to give a damn, only because your golden child is gone. They had no response for that. I turned, ready to go back inside. Go home. Mom reached for my arm. "Nathan, please." I pulled away before she could touch me. She let out a small sob, and for a split second, I felt a flicker of something. Regret? Pity? But then I remembered all the nights I spent wondering if I'd ever get my life back. The rejection letters from colleges because my transcript was sealed. The months of working 12-hour shifts just to afford rent. I hardened my expression. "Don't come back." Then I stepped inside and shut the door. Through the peephole, I watched them linger on the porch. Mom wiped her face. Dad muttered something under his breath. Then finally, they left. I leaned against the door, exhaling. My hands were shaking. It should have felt good to turn them away. But instead, I just felt tired. I walked over to the couch, sank into it, and rubbed my face. Pseudo, my German shepherd, patted over and rested his head on my lap. "Good boy," I muttered, scratching behind his ears. He huffed in response, like he somehow knew exactly what had just happened. I should have expected this. The moment Ethan was gone, they needed someone else to orbit around. But I wasn't going to be their second choice. Not now. Not ever. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. A message from Jake. "Jake, hey man, just checking in. Everything okay?" I hesitated. Then I typed back, "Me?" They showed up. A pause. Then, "Jake. Shit. Yeah. Shit just about summed it up." I set my phone down, exhaled, and let my head fall back against the couch. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. For a while, I thought that was it, that shutting the door in their faces was the final chapter in this mess. But of course, I should have known better. They weren't done with me. A week after they showed up unannounced, I got a letter in the mail. At first, I thought it was another real estate-related thing, maybe a new contract. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a legal notice. From my parents. They were contesting my grandfather's inheritance, the money he left me. I had barely spoken to my extended family after my expulsion, but Grandpa always believed me. When he passed 2 years ago, he left me a sizable portion of his estate, while my parents and Ethan got nothing. Apparently, that didn't sit well with them. I could barely process what I was reading. They were claiming that I had manipulated Grandpa into changing his will, and that, because of Ethan's death, they were entitled to his share. I gripped the paper so hard my fingers shook. They ruined my life. They let Ethan destroy everything I had worked for, and now they wanted to take what little I had built for myself? I called Jake, my voice sharp with barely contained rage. They're suing me. What? He practically shouted. For what? For my own inheritance. Jake swore under his breath. Nathan, this is insane. Do they even have a case? No, I said, pacing. But that's not the point. They don't need to win. They just need to drag me through enough legal fees to make me bleed. And then it hit me. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted control. They weren't coming back to fix things. They were coming back because, for the first time in their lives, they weren't benefiting from my existence. Ethan was gone. Their golden child, their perfect son, the one who could do no wrong, was no longer there to be their priority. So now, I was their last option, and they were trying to break me back into place. The realization settled in my chest like a boulder. I had spent 7 years building something for myself. I had clawed my way out of the pit they left me in. I had survived. I wasn't about to let them take anything from me ever again. I pulled in a slow breath, my jaw tightening. They have no idea who they're messing with. Jake exhaled. What's the plan? I already knew. It was time to end this for good. That weekend, I met with my lawyer. We didn't just fight back against their claim. We went nuclear. I countersued for defamation and emotional distress. I had proof of everything, every lie, every accusation, the fake messages Ethan spread, the financial records showing my parents draining my college fund to support his failed businesses, the text between my dad and Ethan the day I was expelled, showing that they knew what was happening. They had played dirty for years. It was my turn now. When my parents got the legal notice, they lost it. Dad called me, his voice an ugly mix of rage and desperation. Nathan, this is family. I held the phone tighter. No, Dad, this is cause and effect. You made me your enemy the second you let Ethan ruin me. You're being ridiculous. Do you know how expensive lawyers are? We don't have that kind of money to waste on— Oh, but you had money to waste suing me? I laughed coldly. Guess you should have thought about that before coming after what's mine. There was silence. Then a low, bitter laugh. We just wanted to talk to you, Nathan. We just wanted— No, you wanted to control me. I cut in. And now you're paying the price. Dad sucked in a breath like he was about to launch into one of his self-righteous speeches, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. I ended the call, and I blocked their numbers. For the first time in years, I felt free. No more manipulation. No more guilt. No more waiting for them to be the parents I always wanted. They had chosen Ethan over me. And now, they had no one left. A few months later, my lawyer called with an update. They're backing down, she said. Looks like they can't afford to fight this out. I smirked. Good. Oh, and Nathan? Her voice turned slightly amused. Apparently, they tried to reach out to your grandparents again, begging them for financial help. I didn't even have to ask what happened. Grandma and Grandpa had already chosen their side, and it wasn't theirs. The final blow came in the form of a single email from my mother. Subject: We're sorry. Nathan, we just wanted to say that we never meant to hurt you. We miss you. We're struggling without Ethan, and we don't want to lose you too. Please don't let this be the end. You're our son, Mom, Dad. I stared at it for a long time. 7 years. 7 years of pain. 7 years of silence. 7 years of struggling to rebuild from the ashes they helped burn. And now, when they had lost everything, they finally admitted they didn't want to lose me too? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and scratched pseudo behind the ears. My life was mine now, and they had no place in it. I knew they wouldn't give up quietly. The day after I ignored Mom's email, my phone blew up. Calls, voicemails, even messages from distant relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. I let them all go unanswered. Then, the final, desperate attempt. Mom and Dad showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant, Jen, knocked hesitantly. Nathan? There's a couple outside asking to see you. I didn't need to ask who. I exhaled, feeling the exhaustion settle in my bones. I had given them my answer. They just refused to accept it. Tell them I'm busy. Jen hesitated. They said they won't leave. Of course they wouldn't. I glanced at my calendar, saw that I had nothing urgent for the next hour, and made a decision. Fine, bring them to the conference room. When I walked in, they were sitting stiffly across from each other. Mom looked like she'd been crying. Dad looked pissed. Wow, I said, shutting the door behind me. Didn't think we'd be doing this again. Mom flinched. Nathan, please. I crossed my arms, leaning against the table. I already told you. We're done. Dad scowled. You're seriously going through with this lawsuit? Against your own parents? I laughed, shaking my head. You mean the countersuit? You know, the one I filed after you tried to steal my inheritance? Mom let out a shaky breath. We weren't trying to steal it. We just thought, you thought that since Ethan was gone, you could squeeze something out of me instead. She paled. That's not true. Dad leaned forward, his voice cold. You're being vindictive. I straightened. No, I'm setting boundaries. Dad's hands curled into fists. After everything we've been through, you really won't give us a chance? I snapped. After everything we've been through? I repeated, my voice rising. You mean after you let Ethan ruin my life? After you stood by while I lost everything? After you called me a disgrace, cut me off, and never looked back, until you needed something? Mom's eyes filled with tears. Nathan, we thought we were doing the right thing. I let out a sharp breath, my hands shaking. You thought Ethan was the victim. You thought I was the villain, and you never even asked me for the truth. That's not a mistake, Mom. That's a choice. Dad looked away, jaw clenched. Mom sobbed, You're all we have left. And there it was. The truth. The only reason they were here. They didn't want me. They wanted to replace him. The realization settled in my chest like a stone. I don't owe you my life just because Ethan is gone, I said quietly. Mom covered her mouth, shaking her head. Dad stood up suddenly, glaring at me. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. If you want to destroy this family, go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize you made a mistake. I scoffed. I haven't made a mistake in 7 years. I'm not about to start now. He stormed past me, slamming the door open. Mom stayed behind for a moment, her hands trembling. I don't know how we got here, she whispered. I did. I had spent years wondering how my own parents could turn on me, how they could believe lies so easily. But in the end, it was simple. They had never really seen me, and now I was done trying to be seen. You should go, I said, my voice softer now. Mom gave me one last, heartbroken look before she turned and walked away. I let out a long breath, running a hand through my hair. It was over. For real this time. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at my phone. My inbox was filled with unread messages from relatives, most of them telling me I was ungrateful, cruel, selfish. I deleted them all. Then I opened a message from Jake. Jake, heard they showed up. You good? I hesitated, then typed back, me. Yeah, I'm good. It wasn't a lie. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of them anymore. I had built a life without them, and I wasn't looking back. Pseudo hopped up onto the couch, resting his head on my lap. I scratched behind his ears, exhaling. A fresh start. And this time, it was mine alone. Life had a funny way of moving on, even after the most earth-shattering moments. After that final confrontation with my parents, I expected to feel some sort of lingering sadness, a hole where they used to be. But I didn't. Instead, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for them to apologize. I wasn't clinging to some hope that they'd wake up one day and realize how wrong they were. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was free. The weeks that followed were quiet, peaceful even. I focused on my work, taking on bigger real estate clients, finally setting up my own agency, on my terms. No more working under someone else's name. I put in the paperwork, got the branding done, and officially launched Collins Associates Realty. The first time I saw my name on the company's website, something inside me settled. This wasn't Stanford. This wasn't my backup plan. This was mine. And I had built it all without them. One evening, after a long day at the office, I sat on my porch, watching Pseudo chase his tail in the yard. The sun had just started to set, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. My phone buzzed. Jake. Still good. I smirked, shaking my head. The guy had checked in at least 3 times a week since the legal battle ended. Me. I'm better than good. A few seconds later, he called. Did you finally realize I was right about everything? I answered. Jake laughed. No, but I did realize you owe me a steak dinner for putting up with your emotional turmoil for 7 years. Fair. You free this weekend? Hell yeah. I grinned, leaning back in my chair. I appreciate you, man. There was a short silence before he spoke again, his tone more serious. I meant what I said before, Nathan. You're not alone. Family isn't just blood, you know? I swallowed past the unexpected lump in my throat. Yeah, I know. I had spent so long mourning a family that never really existed. I had wasted years trying to earn love that should have been given freely. But now, I had people who chose me, and that was enough. One last thing happened before I truly closed the chapter on my parents. About a month later, an email landed in my inbox. From Mom. Subject: "We're sorry." I stared at it for a long moment, then clicked. "Nathan, we won't contact you again after this. We just wanted to say that we regret how we treated you. We see now how much we hurt you, and we know we can never undo the past. We hope you're happy. Mom, Dad." It was short. No excuses. No pleas for reconciliation. Just regret. For a brief moment, I considered responding. Something final. But then I closed the email, and I deleted it. Because I didn't need their apology to move on. I already had. Months passed. Life continued. Jake and I started working on a side project, something real estate tech related. My business flourished. I traveled. I met new people. And every single day, I woke up knowing that my life was finally mine. No expectations. No guilt. No waiting for someone to finally see me. I had built something real, and I was happy. As I sat outside one evening, sipping a drink, Pseudo curled up at my feet, I felt it deep in my bones. Relief. I had survived. And I had won. Looking back, I realized something. You don't owe anyone your loyalty just because they're family. Love isn't something you should have to earn. It should be given freely, without conditions, without manipulation. And if someone refuses to see your worth, you don't need to prove it to them. You just move on, because you are enough, and you always were. Story 2. Let me tell you a story about how my almost wedding turned into a whole saga of, nope, not dealing with this anymore. It all started with my fiancée, Sarah. We'd been together 5 years, engaged for 3, and things seemed to be going smoothly. We had a date set, the venue booked, the whole 9 yards, or so I thought. 6 weeks before the big day, Sarah drops this bomb on me. She's going to Europe with her college buddies, some trip of a lifetime thing. Cool, I thought. Have fun. I even drove her to the airport, helped with her bags, the whole bit. That's when she hits me with the, "We need to take a break" line, right there at security, like it's no big deal. What the hell do you mean, a break? I wanted to ask, but before I could even get a word in, she's waving goodbye and disappearing into the TSA line. At first, I brushed it off, figured she was just nervous about the trip, maybe a little stressed, but then I tried calling her, texting her, blocked, everywhere, phone, social media, the works. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some casual comment. She meant it. She'd actually flown off to Europe and decided to cut me off without a single conversation. I gave it a few days, hoping she'd come to her senses. But after 5 days of complete silence, I was done. No way was I going to sit around waiting for her to decide when she was ready to be in a relationship again. So, I canceled the wedding. Everything. Venue, catering, flowers, the whole shebang. And then I took it a step further. She wasn't moving in with me anymore either. That was supposed to happen in March. But nope. She could figure out her own living situation when she got back from her little European adventure. Weeks went by, and I heard nothing. Then, out of the blue, she calls, gives me her flight details, acts like everything's fine, like she didn't just ghost me for 6 weeks. What's that got to do with me? I asked, and the silence on the other end was deafening. I didn't give her a chance to explain. Blocked her number, just like she did to me. Later that day, I figured it was time to let people know what was up. We had a group chat with friends and family, so I posted a quick message. Hey, just letting everyone know the wedding is canceled, and so is our relationship. Man, did that blow up. Everyone had questions, so I laid it all out. The Europe trip, the break, the blocking, the whole mess. People were shocked, some even angry on my behalf. It felt good to have that support. Around 2 p.m., Sarah finally chimed in, asking me to call her so we could talk. I told her we could talk right there in the group chat if she wanted to explain herself. She didn't like that, said it was between us, not for everyone else. Yeah, no. She made it public the second she walked out of my life without a word. She tried messaging me a few more times, but I kept it short. I wasn't interested in her excuses. By 6 p.m., she was begging me to pick her up from the airport so we could talk this out. Seriously? Like nothing happened? I told her straight up, that was your plan, not mine. I wasn't going to go running to the airport like some lovesick puppy after everything she'd pulled. Part of me was still waiting for some kind of explanation, some reason that would justify her behavior. But as the hours ticked by, I realized there wasn't going to be one. She made her choice, and I had to live with that. So, I focused on getting my life back on track, started going through our shared accounts, splitting things up, changed the locks on my apartment, even started looking at some trips of my own. Figured if she could run off to Europe for 6 weeks, maybe I deserved some time for myself too. That's where things stood. She was coming back in a couple of days, but I wasn't going to be there waiting. She could figure out her own way home. As far as I was concerned, that chapter of my life was over, and I was moving on to better things. Now, after I'd made peace with the whole wedding being off thing, I figured Sarah would try to reach out again. I was ready for it. What I wasn't ready for was how quickly she'd try to play the victim. It started with a message from our mutual friend, Emily. Emily's always been straight with me, but this time she was hesitant, like she didn't want to get involved. She sent me a screenshot of another group chat, one I wasn't in. It was Sarah, talking to some of her friends, spinning this whole thing like I was the one who overreacted. Can you believe that? She was telling them how stressed she was about the wedding, how she needed space, how she didn't mean for the break to last that long, and how she thought I would understand. And then came the real kicker. I just needed to figure out if I was ready for marriage, but he canceled everything before I could talk to him. Seriously, she blocks me on everything for 6 weeks, then acts like I'm the one who didn't give her a chance to talk? Nah, that's not how this works. I felt my blood pressure rising just reading those messages. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I wasn't going to let her rewrite history and make me look like the bad guy. So, I jumped into the main group chat, where everyone was still buzzing about the wedding cancellation. Look, I posted, I just want everyone to know the truth. Sarah decided we were taking a break without talking to me, blocked me for 6 weeks, and now she's acting like this is some kind of miscommunication. I canceled the wedding because I wasn't going to sit around waiting for someone who didn't respect me enough to even have a conversation. Immediately, people started replying, offering support, saying how messed up the whole situation was. Sarah went silent for a good hour, then finally came in with some weak excuse about how she didn't think it would go this far, and how she never meant to hurt anyone. No accountability, no real apology, just trying to save face. One of my buddies, Jake, called her out right there in the chat. Sarah, he said, you can't just drop a break on someone and disappear for weeks, then expect everything to be fine when you come back. That's not how relationships work. Honestly, I was relieved someone else said it. I was getting tired of defending myself, and then things got even more interesting. Sarah's friend Megan, who I always thought was kind of shady, decided to jump in and defend her. She started talking about how Sarah had been going through a lot, and how wedding pressure can really mess with your head. Okay, I get that planning a wedding is stressful, but come on. That's not an excuse to block your fiancé and go radio silent for 6 weeks while you're partying in Europe. Megan went on and on about how I should have given Sarah more time, how maybe I acted too quickly. That's when I lost it. I wasn't about to sit there and listen to some third party who wasn't even in the relationship try to tell me how to handle it. Megan, I replied, with all due respect, you don't know the half of it. This isn't about wedding stress. It's about the fact that Sarah blocked me, cut me off completely, and didn't bother to talk to me once during the whole trip. I tried calling, texting, and got nothing. How much more time was I supposed to give her? Another 6 weeks? A year? If Sarah didn't want to be with me, she could have said that. But instead, she disappeared and expected me to just sit around waiting. That's not how it works. The chat went quiet after that. I think everyone was starting to realize how messed up the whole situation really was. A couple of days passed, and I thought maybe things would calm down. But nope. I got another call, this time from Sarah's sister, Rachel. Rachel and I had always gotten along, so I figured she was calling to check in. But as soon as I answered, she launched into, "Why did you cancel the wedding without talking to Sarah first?" I was stunned. I didn't expect her to take Sarah's side. "Rachel," I said, "your sister blocked me. How was I supposed to talk to her when she literally cut me off?" She didn't really have an answer to that, but she kept pushing, saying Sarah was heartbroken and that I should have waited. At that point, I'd had enough. "Look," I told her, "I get that you want to defend your sister, but what she did was wrong. She didn't give me any say in this whole break thing, and I'm not going to wait around for someone who doesn't respect me. If Sarah wants to explain herself, she knows how to reach me, but I'm not going to be the one to fix this." She tried to say more, but I just told her I had to go and hung up. I wasn't about to keep having the same conversation with every single person Sarah sent my way. That night, I got another message from Sarah. This time, she was apologizing. Well, sort of. She said she was sorry for how things went down, but didn't take any real responsibility for her choices. It was one of those half apologies where she tried to make it sound like we were both at fault. I didn't reply. There was no point. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I blocked her again, everywhere, just to be sure. At the end of the day, I realized something. I dodged a bullet. If this is how Sarah acted when things got tough, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be married to her. I felt bad for the wasted time, but I was glad it ended before it got any worse. Now, I could finally move on, and that's exactly what I plan to do. You'd think after blocking Sarah, her mom, her sister, her friends, and basically her entire social circle, things would finally settle down, right? Wrong, because apparently, Sarah and her family hadn't quite grasped the concept of no means no. A couple of days after Sarah's last attempt to reach out, I get a text from one of her bridesmaids, Katie. Katie and I weren't close, but she was always nice enough. Still, I was suspicious. The text started innocently enough, asking how I was doing, saying she'd heard about the breakup. I kept my response short, figuring she wasn't just checking in for no reason, and then bam, she hits me with the, "I think you should hear Sarah out." Here we go again. I stared at my phone, debating whether to even respond. Part of me wanted to just block Katie and be done with it, but I was curious. So, I asked her why she thought that. Katie launched into this whole spiel about how Sarah was struggling, crying every day, and how she was too scared to reach out to me directly. Apparently, Sarah had been telling her friends that she messed up big time, but didn't know how to fix it. "Katie," I said, "I've heard all this before. I gave Sarah chances to explain herself, and she didn't. She blocked me for 6 weeks, and then expected everything to be fine when she got back. That's not something I can just forget." Katie tried again, saying how Sarah just needed space and didn't mean to hurt me, but the more she talked, the more I realized what was happening. Sarah had sent Katie to do her dirty work, thinking maybe I'd listen to someone else. I was done. "Look," I told Katie, "I appreciate you trying to help, but this isn't something that can be fixed with a few apologies. It's over, and that's it." I could tell she wanted to keep pushing, but I didn't give her the chance. I blocked her, and then, just when I thought I was in the clear, I get another message. This time, it's from one of Sarah's cousins, Mark. I hadn't heard from Mark in months, and out of nowhere, he's asking if we can meet up to talk. At this point, I was so fed up with everyone trying to drag me back into Sarah's drama that I almost didn't respond. But curiosity got the better of me. We met for coffee, and after some awkward small talk, he finally got to the point. "Look, man, I know this whole thing with Sarah has been a mess. I just wanted to check in and see if there's any way you two could work things out." I almost laughed. "Mark, it's done. There's nothing to work out. She made her choices, and I made mine." He looked uncomfortable. "Yeah, I get that, but Sarah's been talking about how she thinks she made a mistake and, well, she's been hinting that maybe you guys could try again if you gave it some time." I put my coffee down, trying to keep my cool. "Mark, no offense, but Sarah had her chance. She made a mistake, fine, but she didn't just make a mistake. She ghosted me for weeks. She cut me off like I didn't even exist. That's not something you can just bounce back from." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't really hearing me. "Yeah, but what if she's serious about fixing things? She's been talking about wanting to make it up to you." I shook my head. "Mark, I appreciate you coming here and trying to help, but it's not going to happen. If Sarah wants to move on, that's fine, but I'm not interested in picking up where we left off." We sat in awkward silence for a bit. Then Mark finally shrugged and said, "I get it. I just thought I'd give it a shot." I finished my coffee, stood up and said, "Thanks for trying, man, but it's over. It's time for both of us to move on." After that, I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the last of it, but I was wrong. The very next day, I get a message from Sarah's aunt, of all people. I barely knew this woman. She started by saying she'd heard about the breakup and wanted to see how I was doing. At this point, I was so over it that I just straight up asked her, "Did Sarah send you?" "Well, not exactly," she replied, "but she's really been struggling, and I thought I could help mediate things between you two." Mediation? There was nothing to mediate. We were done. She went on about how love is worth fighting for, and how I shouldn't throw away years of a good relationship over a misunderstanding. That's when I realized Sarah had probably been feeding her family this whole sob story, making it seem like I was the one who overreacted. I didn't even bother replying. I just blocked her. No more conversations, no more explanations, no more giving people the chance to drag me back into that toxic mess. I was done, for real this time. After that, things finally quieted down. No more texts, No more calls, no more random family members showing up in my inbox. It felt good, like I could finally breathe again. And honestly, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually moving forward. No more waiting for apologies that didn't mean anything. No more wondering what could have been. Just me, focusing on what's next. And that's exactly what I needed.